All right, Section 6. Section 6, Prioritization Risk Evaluation, Toxic Substance Controls Act, Section 6, Prioritization Risk Evaluation Regulation, Chemical Substance Mixtures. Scope of regulation, if the administrator determines the according to the subsection B4 with the aim of the manufacturer processing the distribution, comments with the either the disposal of the chemical substance, the mixture of the aim of the combination of the activity prescribed and the unreasonable risk of the health and environment. Administrator shall rule with the subsection 18 with the aim of the according with the subsection C2 apply one or more of the following requirements, either the substance mixture with the extent of the necessary chemical substance no mixture no longer present of the risk, and a requirement prohibiting otherwise restricted the manufacturing, profit, distribution, competence of the substance B, but the limiting of the amount of the substance mixture may be manufactured, profit, distributed in commerce with the requirement of the prohibiting otherwise the restricting of the manufacturing, profit, distribution, competence of the substance of the mixture of the particular use of the particular use of the concentration successive level of the specified by the manufacturer of the rule imposed the requirement to be limiting the amount of the substance mixture with the manufactured, profit, distributed in commerce, the particular use of the concentration of the level specified by the administrator and rule imposing requirement 3. Requirements of the substance mixture of the article with the containing the substance mixture marked with the accompanied with the adequate minimum warning for the instructions and with respect with the use of the distribution, commerce, the disposal, with respect with the content, combination with the surface activity form with the content with the surface, the minimum warnings and instructions should be prescribed by the administrator. 4. The requirement of the manufacturing process of the substance mixture of the retain with the record of the process of the use of the manufacturing process of the use of the substance mixture mounting to conduct the test of the reasonable with the necessary with the exterior with the compliant with the requirements of any of the rule applicable under the subsection 5. A requirement prohibiting otherwise regulating any other method of commercial use of the substance of the mixture, but the requirement of the prohibiting otherwise regulating any of the method disposal substance of the mixture, but the aim of the article the name of the substance of the mixture, but the manufacturing process of the aim of the other substance for the process of the disposal of the commercial processes. Requirement under subject may not be required by the person taking any of the action would be violation of the law of the requirement of the effect of the state of the political subdivision which require each of the persons subject to do. They notify the state of the political subdivision with required disposal may occur with the disposal. So the requirement of the manufacturing process of the mixture for the aid of given the determination distributor comments for the substance of the mixture have the reasonable declaration of the leave the other person in the possession of the substance mixture exposed to the substance mixture be to give the public of the determination C the replace repurchase of the substance for the mixture for the elect of the person which of the requirement is directed any of the requirements imposed on the subjects limited to the geographical areas are for 1 year after the day of the enactment of the Franken R. Latenberg Chemical Safety of the 21st century. The administrator shall establish the rule of the risk-based screening process, including criteria to designate the chemical substance of the high priority substance of the risk evaluation, low priority substance of the risk evaluation are not warranted at the time. Profit designated with the priority chemical substance shall include the consideration heavily exposure potential of the chemical substance of the category chemical soda exposed in include the consideration persistency by accumulation, potentially exposed the spectacle of subpopulation storage and now the significant store for the drinking water, the condition, even the significant change of the condition, even the chemical substance volume, the significant change of the volume, chemical substance manufacturer process. Identification of the process of the risk evaluation, high priority substance administration shall designate the high priority substance chemical substance administration conclude with the country, or to cover the damage of the mechanism of the unreasonable risk and injury to health environmental imposed to cover the potential have the potential rapid exposure for them to include with the unreasonable risk of the potential of the exposure to the suspectable subpopulation of relevant to the administrator. Low priority substance of the administrator shall the same with the chemical substance, low priority substance of the conclude, but no, based on information established without the consideration of the non-risk factor, such substance does not meet the standard identified in clause 1 with the design of the chemical substance of the high priority substance. See information requested review of the final prioritization designation rule making the requirements of the shall ensure the time of the make of the priority designation of the chemical substance no shorter than 9 months, no longer than 1 year. The presented designation include a requirement of the administrator of the interested person to submit the relevant information of the chemical substance to the administrator of the initiated the prioritization process before the proposing the priority designation chemical substance provided 90 days of the information provided. A requirement of the administrator published for each of the proposed designation chemical substance high low priority substance along with the identification of the information analysis basically for the make of the period proposed designation provided 90 days of the public comment of the proposed designation. 3. The process of the administrator become with the extent of the deadline clause for the up to 3 months in order to receive the value of the information required for the submitted in accordance with section 4A2. B. The subject of the limitation information available to the administrator at the end of the extension of the maintenance of the enable the designation chemical substance along low priority substance of the administrator shall designate the chemical substance of the high priority substance. 2. Initial risk evaluation substantial sequential determinations designation high and low priority substance. Initial risk evaluation no later than 180 days of the day of enactment Franken Art and Lutenberg Chemical Safety 21st Century Act of the Administration shall ensure the risk evaluation are being conducted with 10 chemical substances drawn with the 2014 update of the Toxic Substance Control Act work plan chemical assessment, but it shall be published list of the chemical substances during a 180-day period. Your additional risk evaluation no later than 3.5 years of the day of the enactment of the freaking R. Lutenberg Chemical Safety 21st Century Act of the administration of the risk evaluation conducted with at least 20 higher priority. Some of the list of the 20 chemical substances has been designated with low priority substance, subject with the limitation of the 50% of the chemical substance of the risk evaluation being conducted with the administrator of the drawn with the 2014 update of the Toxic Substance Control Work Plan of the Chemical Assessment. Continuing designation risk evaluation administrators continue priority substance conducting risk evaluation in accordance with the subsection of the pace for the consistent with the applicability administrator complete with the risk evaluation according with the deadlines in paragraph 4G. The preference of the designation high priority substance of the preference of the chemical substance list in the 2014 update of the Toxic Substance Control Act work plan chemical assessment with the persistence of the bioaccumulation score of 3. Chemical substance listed in the 2014 update of the Toxic Substance Control Act work plan chemical assessment of the known human carcinogens and high chronic toxicity. Metal and metal compounds identified with the priority risk evaluation conducting risk evaluation of metal compound with the administrative framework of the metal risk assessment officer of the assigned advisor of the risk assessment form of the date of the March 2007. Successors documented the address of the metal of the risk assessment peer reviewed and scientific advisory board. 3. Initiation of the risk evaluation designation. Risk evaluation initiated the designation of the chemicals of the high priority with the substance of the administrative shall initiate the risk evaluation substance of the revision of the administrator revive the designation of the low priority substance of the based on the information made available to the administrator. See ongoing designation administrator designate at least one high priority substance of the completion of each of the risk of the evaluation of the risk evaluation chemicals of the designated made in paragraph 4C2. Risk establishment of the process of deadlines. The risk evaluation pursuant with the paragraph of the determining whether the chemicals of the present with the unreasonable the risk of the health injury of the health or environment with the consider the health risk factor, including unreasonable risk of the potential of the susceptible subpopulation of the each of the risk of the evaluation. The administrator owned these conditions use E an establishment of the present no later than 1 year after the enactment of Franklin R. Lutenberg Chemical Safety 21st Century Act. The administrator shall establish the rule by processing conducting risk of the evaluation according with the subparagraph A, C, the requirement of the administrator to conduct with the published risk evaluation according with the rule of the promulgated with the subparagraph B of the chemical substance. 1. This has been identified with the paragraph 2A with the designated on paragraph 1A, 1B1, and subject to the subparagraph E of the manufacturer chemicals has recovered and informed of the manner of the UV criteria for the prescribed administrator of the rule of the promulgator on subparagraph E of the subject of the risk evaluation. D. The scope of the administrator no later than 6 months after the initiative of the risk evaluation. Publish the scope of the risk evaluation conducted include the hazard exposure with the condition of the UV the potential exposure with the selectable subpopulation administrator exposed and conservative for each designation of high priority substance ensure with at least 12 months between the initiation and prioritization process for the chemical sub of the population with the scope of the risk evaluation. Chemical sub of the risk evaluation conducted with the chemical substance have been identified within paragraph 2A with the select with the subparagraph E5, E42 with the paragraph not less than 3 months after before the administrator published for the scope of the risk evaluation. Limitation criteria: the percentage requirement of the administrator shall ensure the number of the chemical substance undergoing the risk evaluation. Clause 1 of the subparagraph C, the number of the chemical substance undergoing the risk evaluation under clause 2 of the subparagraph C. 1. Not less than 25% of sufficient recovery made under clause 2 of the subparagraph C, but not more than 50%, and require of the 2, not more than 50%. 3. 2. Requested risk evaluation. Requested risk evaluation on paragraph C2, but it shall be subject to the payment the fee with pursuant to section 26B with the administrator shall not be expedited without otherwise provided the special treatment of such risk evaluation. 3. Preference of deciding whether the grant with the request of the paragraph C2 with the administrator shall give the preference for the request of the risk evaluation. Chemical substance for which the administrator determine the risk of the imposed of one or more states have the potential to have the significant impact with the interstate commerce and health of the environment. 2. 4. The exemption of chemical substance for the risk of that have been granted on subparagraph C2 that have not been subject to section 18B with the request of the risk evaluation. Chemical substance would have made on some paragraph C2 with the drawn within 2014 with the update of the Toxic Substance Control Act work plan with the chemical assessment which shall be granted with the discretion of the administrator shall not be subject to the clause 1-2. F. Requirements of conducting with the risk evaluation on subject of the administrator shall within the accessible available information have the exposure for the condition used for the chemicals of it include the information with the relevant specific the risk of injury, health, environment, information, potential exposed, suspectable subpopulation identified relative to administrator, described with the aggregated substantial exposure with the chemicals of the number of the condition with the UV conserve the base for the consideration. 3. Not consider the cause of the non-risk factor. 4. To take into account the relevant likely duration, incidence, intensity, and frequency number of the exposure of the UV the condition of the chemical substances. 5. Describe the way with the scientific evidence identified by the hazard exposure. G, deadline with the administrator shall complete with the risk evaluation. Chemical substance practical no later than 3 years after the date of the administrator initially initiated the risk evaluation. Subparagraph C, 2. It may extend with the deadline with risk evaluation for no more than 6 months with a note of the comment with the administrator of the provider not less than 30 days with the public notice of the opportunity of the commitment with the draft of the risk evaluation prior to the publishing of the final risk evaluation. 3. Promulgation subsection rule. The deadline with administrator determines if the chemical substance with the unreasonable risk for the injury of the health of the environment in accordance with the subsection B4A. With the administrator shall propose a federal register rule with the subsection A chemical substance with no later than 1 year after the date of the which the final risk evaluation regarding the chemical substance is published shall publish the federal register final rule no later than 2 years after the date of which the final risk evaluation regarding the chemical substance was published, and they extend the deadline with the paragraph with no more than 2 years, subject with the condition of the aggregated length of the extension of the under the subparagraph of the subsection B4D2 does not exceed the 2 years, but the subsection subject with the limitation. Administrator may not extend the deadline with the publication proposed with the final rule regarding the chemical substance drawn from 2004 update with the Tax and Substance Control Act work plan with the chemical assessments or a chemical substance with respect of the persistence of the bioaccumulation scores of higher for one or either high or moderate, and with the other pursuing the Tax and Substance Control Act work chemical method documentation published in the Administrator in February 2004. 12. The successor scoring system of adequate public justification demonstrating the following review of the information reliable, reasonably available. The administrator cannot complete the proposed final rule with additional information regarding the chemical substance. Requirements of the rule. The statement of effect for the proposed and inquiry promulgated the rule in subsection A with the respect for the chemicals of the mixture of the administrator shall consider the published statement then based on the reasonably available information. With 2 and 1, the effect of the chemical substance of the mixture of the health and magnitude of the exposure to human beings and the chemical substance. 2, the effect of the chemicals of the mixture of the environmental and magnitude of the exposure of the environment to such substance. Mixture. 3, the benefits of the chemicals of the mixture of the various uses. 4, the very reasonable, ascertainable economical consequence of the rule, including consideration 1, likely effect of the rule in the economy, small business, technological innovation, environmental, public health. 2, the cost of benefit of the proposed final regulation action for the one or more primarily alternative regulatory action with considered by the administrator. 3, cost effectiveness of proposed regulatory action of the one or more primary alternative of the regulatory action considered in the administrator. B. Selecting requirements to select for the prohibition, restrict the administrator to the fact of the extent of the practical with the consideration of paragraph A within core of the subsection A, the consideration alternatives based on the information published in paragraph A. The 7, the prohibit, the restrict for the man with a substantial prevent with the specific condition, use of the chemical substance, make sure that deciding appropriate transition period with the such action the administrator the consider the extent practical with the technical, economical, feasible alternative benefit health of the environmental compared to use the proposed the prohibit. The restrict with the reasonable but the applicable constitute with the proposed prohibition other restrictions affect the replacement part. In general, the administrator shall accept the replacement part of the complex of the overall goods and with the complex of the consumer good of the design prior to the day of the publication federal register rule by the under subsection A and let the administrator find such the replacement cards contribute to significantly risk of identify the risk evaluation conducted within subsection B4A with the original population identifies and partially with the exposed substantial population. Definition, subparagraph, the term of the complex for the consumer group the mean with electronically mechanical device composed with the multiple with the manufactured components of the intent of the useful life of 3 or more years of them while the product with the typically with the consumed with the destroy with the discard with the single use of the components that are to be impractical to redesign and replay with the 2 the term complex durable goods mean with the manufacturer give the over the 100 or more manufactured component with the intent of the use of the low life over the 5 or more years of the product with the typically not consumed with the destroy with the discard after a single use. The article then select among prohibition of the other restrictions administrator shall apply with the prohibition restriction and apply article category with the articles containing the chemical substance mixtures only to the extent of the necessary to draft the identify the risk of the exposure of the chemical substance mixture with the article with the category article with the substance mixture does not present the unreasonable risk of the injury the health of the environmental identified with the risk evaluation conducted in accordance with the subsection B4A. Alright, procedures. When prescribed the rule in the subsection A, the administrator shall proceed with the conform with the 553.5 of the United States Code without regard of any reference section with the 556 and 557. Title. So, for the published note of the proposed rulemaking, particular reason for the proposed the rule, all interested parties submit and written down with the review of the arguments make all of the submission publicly available. The promulgate the final rule based on the matter in the rulemaking record. Do you make it a published rule with the determination described in subsection effective date, and generally any rule under subsection A of the administrator shall specifically date on which they shall take an effect for the when the date shall soon be as practicable. B. Except that it is provided with paragraph C and D with the specific mandatory complying with the date with all of the requirements under the rule under the sub A, which shall be as practical with no later than 5 years after the date with the promulgation of the rule except in the case of the use of exempt under subsection G. C. Specifically mandatory complying with the date with the start of the plan, whatever the phase out requirements under the rule under subsection A shall be assumed with practical not later than 5 years after the promulgation of the rules except with the case with expect with the subsection specifically mandatory complying with the due dates for the rule, implement with the ban in favor of the requirements under the rule. The subsection A of the rule shall be as practical as provide with the reasonable transition period variability determined in the administrator of the complying with the date of the establishment paragraph 1 of the may vary for the different affected persons. R3A, the administrator may declare the proposed rule in the subsection A to be effective complying with the requirements of the mandatory use of the publication of the Federal Register of the proposed rule with upon complying with the data with which for the requirement of the final rule promulgated in subsection 6A until the administrator revoke with the proposed rule in accordance with the paragraph B. The administrator determines that the manufacture, processing, distribution, clearing for the disposal of chemical substance and mixture of substances which proposed the rule, the combination of such activity likely result in the unreasonable risk of the serious widespread injury of the health of the environmental before such effective date with the consideration of risk factors to make even the subject of the proposed rule with effectively necessary to protect the public interest. In case of the proposed rule, prove that the manufacture, processing, and distribution of chemical substance mixture because of the risk of determining the cause 1A, 1 of the core of the 1I or the core head of the action of the 7th granted with the relief of the respect of the risk associated with each of the substance mixture. Such proposed rules are made with the effect of the shall not be proposed with the judicial review of the considered final agency action. If the administrator brings the proposed rule effective with the publication Federal Register, the administration office expects as easily as possible to give the interested person and promptly notice of the such action in accordance with the subsection C with the effective either promulgate such rules proposed in modification and revoke it. Polychlorinated bioethanols, which is 6 months after the effective date of the act of the administration shall promulgate the rule, so I'm never disposed of polychlorinated bioethanols and requiring polychlorinated ethanols with to be clearly adequate market with instruction with the requirements, processing, distribution, commerce, use of the disposal with respect to the in combination of such activities. Requirements prescribed in the rule of the paragraph shall be consistent with requirements of paragraph 2 and 3 to A and 2A. Except for the providing paragraph B with the effective one of the effective date of the act with no person manufacture profit distribute the commerce for the use of the polychlorinated bioethanol in the manner of the then totally enclosed manner. Alright, the administrator B. The administrator may use the authorized manufacturer, processing, distribution, common with the use of the combination of such action biochlorinated bioethanol in manner of the totally enclosed manner of the administrator fine with the subs manufacturing, processing, distribution, common use with any or combinations of such activity will not be present unreasonable risk of an injury or health environment. See, for the purpose of the paragraph, the totally enclosed man with the means even the man with the ensure for the explosion of the human being with the environment with the polychlorinated bioethanol and significant determined administrated by the rule. Alright, 3A. The accept the provided with the paragraph B and C with the D with the no person manufactured polychlorinated at all 2 years with the effect of the date of the act, no person may process in commerce with the polychlorinated ethanol 2 or 1.5 years with such a date. Any person may be petitioned for the administrator with exemption of the requirements of paragraph A with the administrator may grant rules of exemption with the requirement administrator finding unreasonable risk for the injury, health of the environment would result. The good faith of the efforts would have been made with the developable chemical substance that does not present unreasonable risk for the injury, the health of the environment, which may be substantially to do with this biochlorinated bioethanol. Exemption of the grant with the subparagraph shall be subject to the terms and conditions of the administrator prescribed for the such be in effect with the such period but not more than 1 year of the date of the grant with except with the providing paragraph D of the administrator may prescribe. The subparagraph A shall not apply with the distribution commerce for the polychlorinated bioethanol and such polychlorinated bioethanols with a solid purpose of the other than resale of the 2 or more 1/2 year of the day of the enactment of this act. Do the administrator may extend with the exemption granted purpose to the subparagraph B that has extended the period and not exceeding 68 for the purpose of authorizing the Secretary of Defense, Secretary of the Military Department to provide the transportation custom territory of the United States with the polychlorinated bioethanol generated with the under the control of the Department of Defense purpose of the other disposal of the treatment and storage of the custom territory of the United States with the polychlorinated bioethanols are already in transit in the air and then stored location administrated determined and sole discretion of the administrator that would be not otherwise authorized for the custom territories of the United States where the period of the original exemption of the administrator shall promptly publish the notice of the such extension of the Federal Register. Any rule under paragraph 1A2, 1, 2B, and 3B shall be promulgated within accordance with the paragraph 3 of the subsection 6C. Subsection does not limit the authority administrator to any of the provisions of the Act or any other federal law with taking action respecting the polychlorinated bioethanol. Alright. Mercury prohibition on the sale, the distribution, transfer of elemental mercury. Federal agency except by paragraph 2 with the effect of the beginning of the date of the enactment of the subsection. No federal agency shall convey, sell, or distribute any other federal agency or any state with a local government agency, any private individual entity with any elemental mercury under the control of the jurisdiction of the federal agency. Exemption. Paragraph 1 shall not apply with a transfer between the federal agency and elemental mercury. Sole purpose of the facilitating storage of the mercury to carry out the act. B. In conveyance of the sale, the distribution, transfer of coal, leasing of the federal coal, and notifying of the subsection prohibit the low cost leasing of the coal. Or exemption criteria with the exemption administrator may use the part of the rule of the problem given the subsection A, the separate rule of the grant with the exemption from the requirement of the subsection A of the rule of the specific condition of chemical substance is mixture with the administrator finds a specific condition with critical assessment with non-technical, economical, feasible, safer alternative to take into consideration has exposure complying with the requirements that apply with respect to the specific condition use scientifically disrupt national economy, national security, and critical infrastructure for the specific condition use of the chemical substance to make sure that compared reasonable available alternatives provide substantial benefit to the health and environmental public safety. For exemptional analysis statement, the proposed exemption within the subsection administrator shall analyze the brief of the exemption shall public with the analysis statement that describes the analysis should be taken account of the period of the exemption. The administrator shall dealt with the period of the rule of the under subsection time limit of any of the exemption time by determined by the administrator. Extend the modified or eliminated exemption administrator determined the base of the reasonable available information act with it may appear public justification exemption warrants extension notice notifications no longer necessary. Conditions as part of the rule promulgated with the subsection administrator shall include including reasonable record keeping monitoring reporting requirements and extent of the administrator determining of the conditions necessary to project with the human environmental while achieving the purpose of the exemption. H. Toxicity, chemical of the persistent and bioaccumulative of the toxicity exemption condition no more later than 30 years after the date of the enactment of the Frank R. Leutenberg Chemical Safety Act of the 21st century. The administrator shall propose the rule of the subsection A with respect to the chemical substance of the 2014 Toxic Substance Control Act work plan for the chemical assessment. And an administrator of the reasonable basis that conclude that any toxic with respect to the persistence of the bioaccumulation score with higher than 1 or in either higher or moderate for other than pursuing the Toxic Substance Control Act work plan with the chemical methods of the document published in the administrator of February 2012 with the successor scoring system and or metal compound other which the administrator has been completed work plan problem formulation intake with the review on the section F of the 5 and enter for the consistent agreement in subsection 4 prior to the date of the enactment of the Frank R. Leutenberg Chemical Safety Act of the 21st Century Act. B. Exposure for the condition limited likely the general population potential exposure for the substantial suspectable subpopulation if of the administrator environmental base for the exposure for the assessment conducted within the administrator. 2. No risk evaluation required. The administrator shall not be required to conduct the risk evaluation of chemical substances that are subject to paragraph 1. 3. Final rule. No later than 18 months after the proposing rule pursuant in paragraph 1, the administrator shall propose and give the final rule of subsection A. 4. Selecting restriction. Any of the among the prohibitions of the other restriction promulgated rule under subsection presuming the paragraph 1 administrator shall address the risk injury of the health of the environmental that the administrator determines for the presenting of the chemical substance to reduce the exposure of the chemical of the extent of the practical relationship of the subsection any time of the period of the day of the 90 days after the day of the enactment of Frank R. Leutenberg Chemical Safety Act of the 21st century. Administrators may be designated with the subsection B1 and with the receipt of the requirement of section B4 C2 such chemical substance should be subject to the subsection extent of the selecting among the prohibitions of the restriction promulgated the rule pursuing the subsection A of the administrator shall both ensure that the chemical substance made for the rule making certain for the subsection A that will reduce the exposure of substance to the extent practicable. Final agency action under the section subject to the section 18 of the determination administered by the under subsection B4A with the chemical substance does not present with the unreasonable risk of the injury or the health of the environmental shall be issued with the order to consider the final agency act effective beginning date issuance as an order and the final rule promulgated in subsection A included associated determination of the administrator under subsection B4A of the chemical substances present unreasonable risk injury to the health of the environmental shall be considered the final agency action effective beginning on the date of the promulgation final rule definition purpose of the act with the requirement is used within selection of the non-display for the statutory common law. Alright, section 7 is imminent hazards.